So in my last video, I talked about Chris Bledsoe, who he is, what kind of experience he had, and that he's talking to this entity called Hathor. And that Hathor is this Egyptian goddess name, but that she has appeared to people, across history. She's as old as time and has gone by many names. And people have assumed that she's Mary, who is also a Queen of Heaven goddess, just like Hathor, who she calls herself. And Hathor is tied to Isis and, Indian goddesses, and Astarte, who's mentioned in the Bible, and Ashtaroth, and just a ton of different goddesses, Diana, Artemis, Juno, Hera. So it's all the same entity. And so I have a feeling what's going to happen, this is my end times thought here, or end times scenario that I think is being set up, is that she's going to appear to the world via Chris's vision or dream that he had, which I think they're going to actually do. He told in interviews that he saw this 7 suns appear in the sky.
Suns. There were seven suns. Like the sun that shines on earth. There were 6 side by side. And then a little space, like there was one missing here, and the other one was sitting over here by itself. So there was 1 and then 6. They're going down, and I can see the top half of them. And so everybody in my dream is freaking out, like, oh my God, what is this, 7 suns? They were all the same height. They all vanished below the horizon. And when the 7th, when they all vanished, another one came up and ascended up, and it took up the whole entire sky. So it was larger than all of them put together. It's just humongous, and I woke up in a sweat. To me, it was the return of something magnificent.
And my guess is that that's probably how they're going to appear to the world, so that it's obvious to people that this is not just, a natural phenomenon. It's going to be a major event. And she's told Chris that in 2026, there's going to be when Regulus, the star Regulus, enters the eye of the Sphinx, that there'll be a new knowledge.
Said that when the star of Regulus, she called it a red star. When you look at it, it looks blue. But she said when Regulus is red on the horizon, in front of the gaze of the Sphinx, before daylight. So in other words, when it's sitting right on top of the horizon, before the sun comes up, that moment would mark a change in humanity's knowledge. And she showed me other things, war.
Well, that, according to Chris and his contacts at NASA and other places, they figured it out to be Easter of 2026, April 5th of 2026. And, I personally believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. So I'm thinking what might happen here is that we're going to go up. The world will be in chaos. And then these things are going to start appearing. Chris might even have his vision. And then after that, this Mary-like entity is going to appear to the world. She's going to say that her and her kind created us, that they're the gods of old. They're going to prop up a leader who will be the Antichrist. Now, will the Antichrist be a hybrid, a created being, or a human? I don't know. But I believe that it will be somehow tied into Ra or Osiris. Because if you look at the Hathor legend, there's this Osiris rebirth cycle, and Hathor was Osiris's wife and consort. Uh, and she had a son named Horus. Well, Horus in the movie Zeitgeist and other books, they've been trying to bring Jesus and Horus together, like that Jesus, the story, was influenced by the story of Horus, which isn't true at all, but they've been trying to mesh that belief. And another god who's tied in with Horus is Apollo, as Horus the Elder. I believe that what's going to happen is that you're going to have this unholy trinity. So you're going to have Hathor as the Holy Spirit. You're going to have the Antichrist, this Mahdi, who could be a human that later gets possessed by Satan as Osiris or Ra, or could be a created being that looks human but not fully human, a hybrid being. It's kind of hard to say, but I believe that the false prophet is going to be her son Horus, who's going to say he's Jesus, that he's not the Son of God, that he's just a prophet, that Christianity got it wrong. This is exactly what the Muslims believe in their eschatology, their end times eschatology. And so you're going to have the unholy trinity telling the world this when I believe the Christians will be gone, and everybody is going to be desperate and be fooled by it, because you're going to have what this guy that looks like Jesus, acts like Jesus, says he's Jesus, tell you, yeah, you got me wrong though, but you really should like this guy, and do all the miracles and everything else that Jesus does. And then they're going to, at the end, get the world to prepare and wait for the Dajjal, who is actually going to be Jesus, to come. And that's when Armageddon's going to happen. That's going to be the big battle. All these people are going to be gathered to fight Jesus when it's not, he's the real Jesus. They're thinking this guy that they're following is the real Jesus. They're going to be so deceived. And that's exactly the situation that I think is going to happen. And it's interesting because if you look at the prelude to deception that we've had, we have to take a look at how movies and media have set us up for this acceptance of these old gods. I mean, we have so many TV shows and movies about the ancient gods, that are coming back, that are superheroes. Like Thor, for example, is a superhero, right? Hercules has its own, had its own TV show, and is that he was a Nephilim, really. He was a hybrid, half angelic son, half human. And, so these were the heroes of old, as the Bible said. And, movies have been all about that. You've had comic books and TV and movies talking about multi-dimensions, angelic, godlike Superman, giants, superpowers, the old gods. You have things like the Cthulhu Mythos by H.P. Lovecraft. Talk about the old gods, the return of the old gods, the sleeping old gods. You had these movies that are modern just recently in the last 5-10 years, that like Gods of Egypt, where Hathor was an actual heroic character in that movie. She's Isis, also known as Isis, but she was called Hathor in the movie, and she basically sacrificed herself at the end and was a good god, and Horus was the hero of that movie. Just go figure on that. And then you have movies like Stargate, which, came out in the 80s, 90s, and, talking about the return of aliens that are Egyptian. I think we've been slowly programmed to accept this, that when it happens. And, but, why are they doing this? Well, At the Tower of Babel, God gave his angels power over specific parts of the world. He had a divine council, that he basically allowed his angels, his princes, his principalities of particular areas to reign and do his work for him. Some of those rebelled, some of those fell. For instance, Michael, the protector of Israel, in the Bible is, talked about fighting the Prince of Persia, who is a fallen entity. A lot of these entities are known by different names across the world's locations. I mean, it's the same thing with the prince and the power of the air, Satan. There's a ton of weather gods, storm gods, and they're all the same entity. In non-Hebrew canon, we have El's 70 sons in the Canaanite religion that serve the same purpose. Council of gods ruling the nations. And then you have the alien UFO. We were created by aliens. Well, that's been in movies like Prometheus, 2001, A Space Odyssey, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, The Arrivals. That's a long time concept for these science fiction TV shows, science fiction movies, that, we were somehow created by aliens or transplanted here by aliens, and that aliens, will come back one day and be our benefactors again. There's a large amount of people that believe in the Anunnaki, waiting for Nibiru to come back, and, the different cultures around the world, like the Hopi, believe that they've interacted with these beings and that one day they will return, that they are our creators. So you're going to have these multiple belief systems merged into one giant world church. You're going to have the Abrahamic religions. So you have the Muslims, the Jews, the Christians. My hope and what I believe is that the Christians will be gone, but during the tribulation, there'll be the tribulation saints, the people that were left behind or were waffling and that realized the truth and get saved during that time. They'll rebel against it, but there's going to be a large amount of people that are going to see the Mary figure and go, "That's Mary," and then they're going to say, "Hey, that she just introduced her son. That's Jesus. We got to follow Jesus." So there's, a lot of your new Christians. The Jews are going to believe that this is the Messiah. The Muslims are going to believe that, this is the return of Jesus, the prophet. Will that God, will he say that, I am the same as Allah, the Antichrist, or that Allah is powering him? I don't know. It's something I've been kind of wondering about, because the Bible said that he will worship a God that his ancestors did not know. Yeah, I'm not really sure on how that is going to be. This is what I think is going to happen. And I see how we're going into this, and it's just around the corner. I really believe that we're not too far from the end. I mean, the rapture, if the pre-tribulation rapture is, if it's right around the corner, it has to be so close. And the reason I think that is, I was a big fan of Tom Horn, Thomas Horn, who wrote the Wormwood Prophecy. Love his books, love Skywatch TV. And Tom believed, that Apophis is Wormwood, the asteroid or meteor that's coming towards us in 2029, April 13th, 2029. Well, that would have to be a mid-tribulation event. So if that's the mid-tribulation that happens in, that means that 3.5 years before that would be October 13th, 2025. So if Tom was right, that wormwood is Apophis, that means the tribulation starts October 13th, 2025. And I'm not setting dates. This is kind of what Tom believed. But I will say something about Tom. Tom predicted the resign of Pope Benedict way before it happened. He not only predicted it, he predicted the month that it would happen. And it happened just like he predicted. What was interesting is he didn't think it did happen because they kept it secret, but he actually resigned exactly the year and month that he said he would. And this was done like a year or two in advance. So the fact that Tom got that right, and he had these visions and these dreams where when he had them, he said, I was never wrong on them. And then he had this one about Apophis. You know, it's hard for me not to take seriously. And I really recommend that you look into his book or look into his writings on in the Messenger as well. He had 2 books based on the coming of Apophis, Wormwood Prophecy and the Messenger. But I don't know if this is going to all pan out, but it seems rather funny, just the timing of everything. And I just want to share this information because I could really see it going this direction. I appreciate you listening, and I hope that Jesus has made a major impact in your life. And if he hasn't, I hope that you will accept him and you'll pray and you'll listen to, you know, his words to you. I'm sure if you get on your knees and you pray, you ask Jesus to come into your heart and to be your salvation, I'm sure he'll do it. He did it for me. I'm no better than anybody else. And he loves us. He wants us to be with him. And I feel so strongly that our time is short. I don't know if there's going to be a rapture this year. Likely, could happen. I don't know if it's a mid-trib rapture. I don't really follow that. But if it is, you know, Tom Horn could be right on that. If it's, you know, up to, you know, right before Apophis. But we'll see how everything goes. But the timing is just incredible. All these biblical events we're seeing, all this weather stuff, red heifers, you know, Chris Bledsoe and his lady saying that they're going to be some major event in April, you know, on Easter of 2026. It's biblical times we're living in. But I'm going to go now, and I appreciate you listening, and thank you so much. God bless.